right, three. Hello, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm really glad you could join us. So today we're talking a little bit about your business not being your actual product. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about a lot of insight that's going to help you separate your business from your products and understand the importance of what your products mean to your business, but not being everything to do with your business. So a lot of good insight today coming with Shawn Khorrami. Now, Shawn is a serial entrepreneur, having started and managed more than a dozen businesses, up to 100 million in revenue, involving products and services across a wide range of verticals. Now, in the process, he's managed thousands of employees, servicing tens of thousands of customers, large and small, from consumers to small to medium-sized businesses as well, and even government entities. Now, he has formal education and extensive hands-on experience in business operations, strategic planning, marketing, sales, finance, legal, and human resources as well. He's obtained university diplomas in mathematics, economics, computers, and earned a law degree as well. Shawn, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Man, you're a busy guy. Diplomas in mathematics, economics, computers, and you went ahead and got a law degree as well. You're like, why not?
Well, I always say I liked formal education a lot. And even though I say to people, I don't think that's what, in order to get the skills that you need to be doing that. There are plenty of people who are hugely skilled, but I liked it. And I think it's because I was just kind of lazy and wanted to stay in school, because I certainly didn't like going to class. I mean, it would be a rare thing to see me in class, but I ended up at the exams, and I seem to have a talent for those.
Well, I guess that's all that matters. I mean, if you're able to get that far without liking exams, congratulations. So one of the things that you say is that your product is not your business, but your business is your product. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, a lot of times we approach a business and we kind of look at it as, okay, we're selling X product and that's the business. And I use as an example. I say, I use it in professional services. If you go to a doctor and say, what's your business? They'll always describe what the product is, which is delivering whatever health they're delivering, right? I do this kind of surgery, or I see these kinds of patients. That's my business. That's not their business. That's the product they're delivering. And the product is not their business. Their business, however, is their product. What does that mean? That means that, how's your staff interacting with your patients? How are you dealing with appointments? How are you doing it so that you can deliver the value, the health that you're delivering in the best way possible, but at the same time, have the number of patients you want, the kind of business that you want? What are all of those things? What kind of accounting software are you using? Do you have lenders? Something, for example, I was listening to your show recently, and you had Pascal Bachman on. He was talking from a health perspective, but he was saying a lot of times I get into a business and the business owner is not considering 70% of what is involved in dealing with a business. Or something, by the way, you said in a recent show that you had, where you were talking about getting credit, and you said, hey, you know what? The name of your business, if they go to Secretary of State and they don't see the same name, yeah, that's a big problem for you. You may not think of it as a big problem, but those are all these little pieces that go into running a successful business. And you don't consider those. You consider your product to be your entire business. That's the one place that's wrong. The second place it becomes wrong is not considering your business to be your product, which is what you're giving to the world is that business. That is the product. What you get out of any company that you are a customer of, for example, us as consumers, we look at this company and say they sell this product. They deal with returns this way. Oh, and every time I contact them, they're immediately back at me. It's very easy to talk to them. They don't argue with me about X, Y, and Z. Those things are the entire product. And so that entire business, everything around it is the product they're offering to you as a consumer, to us as consumers. And that's what I want people to sort of understand as they get into their own small businesses and they start their own businesses, to look at all of those things and say, this is what the product is.
So it really has to do with the entire customer experience, everything involved with the customer experience. So what you're saying is that really it sounds like, the experience that your customers really have, that in itself is the business, not what you're actually selling.
That's your forward-facing part of your business, right? Is what customers see, everything, right? Including, by the way, what do you put up on Twitter? What are you saying, socially? I mean, sometimes companies go too far. They don't go far enough. What kind of statements are they making? And then your customers are making judgments based on that. You're not just competing in who sells the best, tires. You're competing in all of those things. That's the front side of your business. The backside of your business is, what we mentioned that you were discussing, which is, oh, geez, how am I getting my capital? And what is that capital making me do, right? Because as soon as you bring in these third parties, right, whether it's a lender, an investor, whoever it is, they want to have say so over how things go. And that influences how you deliver your business to the world, right? So all of the looking at it holistically and sort of taking into account all of those things is how properly to look at a business.
So if you're going to launch a business like this and do it the right way, how do you put together like a business model or map or map of some sort of how to do this to make, your business front end and back end have the best experience, have the best product per se?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, you're looking at what you want to sell, right? Obviously, that product that you're selling is very important. You want to look at that. You want to study exactly, how the market on that thing works. Okay, that's incredibly important to see what industry you're getting in, what kind of competition you have, how the attitudes are, how those things work. The next thing, by the way, that I don't notice anybody doing when they're first getting into a business is how the logistics work. Okay, let's say you're selling, you're getting into e-commerce and you're going to sell, a humidifier. I bring that up because that's an example I use of a company that we invested in. But where is that humidifier coming from? Who's making that? How is it, where are you going to be housing these things? Are you just drop shipping it, or are you actually, and I don't typically do those kinds of businesses. So are you, where's your inventory being held? Where is the warehousing? How are you getting that to the consumer? What kind of consumers do you have, right? Because today's consumers, I use this as an example. I work with a very large company that sells food products. And their business is B2B. They sell to businesses, right? They're wholesalers. And so they wanted to do B2C. They wanted to change around their business. They want to keep their B2B, but also sell to consumers. Right? And they have a hugely respected brand with consumers. Consumers recognize them. They buy them at supermarkets. They're all over the place, right? When they wanted to do this, they immediately thought that business that they have would translate into consumer sales. And it doesn't, because that consumer has a completely different expectation than your B2B customer has, right? So, that consumer that they have, that consumer, and I explained it to them right at the beginning because they had tried it and they failed. And they came and talked to me, and I said, well, this is not going to work. Why? Because the first thing is your consumer wants to buy one jar of something, unlike your B2B customer that wants cases and pallets of it. Okay, they don't want it on a schedule. They want it today because they're cooking something today and they need that thing today, or they need it tomorrow. Okay, you have to get one jar to a consumer anywhere in your sales area, and they're in 3 countries, the US being one of them. You have to get it anywhere in the US within 1 day. How are you going to do it? Because what you're set up for is a truck coming to your warehouse and picking up pallets or truckloads of that product and going to some store or some warehouse somewhere else. So that's the part that you're missing. And that logistics, even with a company, with the resources, with brand recognition, hugely respected brand, all of the pieces there, they couldn't do it, and it would never work with a consumer. So you have to look at how your logistics are going to work, where your suppliers are, particularly in today's world, where your suppliers are with the supply chain issues that there are, and where are you going to get capital from? How are you going to fund this business? That's a very important piece that most people don't put that much time into, except where they look at pure dollars that are coming in. They don't see where those dollars are coming from. So somebody may say to you, oh yeah, I'm starting this business. I can get $50,000 out of my credit card. And that's plenty. Well, I mean, wait a minute. Your credit cards, I'm not sure you want to use that money. Certainly not for starting a business. Maybe you do. Maybe there's a situation where you do, but it would be uncommon in my judgment to use something like that. So where your capital is coming from, what kind of capital is it? Is it lending? Is it investment? Is it a combination? And what are exactly the terms of that? When you have to return this money? When do you have to pay off this money? All of these things you have to sit there and put together. And start building out exactly what your business plan is. And at the very beginning, you may turn around and in terms of your front facing, have a whole lot of different places that you can market, a whole lot of different markets that you could go into. But as a new business, is that something you can do? Can you market that broadly and still be able to deliver value to your customers, to be able to service them? Or are you going to fall flat on your face because you went too broad, you have too many different customer profiles, you have too many different needs to meet, and therefore you're unable to do it. So there's a lot of things to look at. That's not just, okay, this product, this is a wonderful product that everyone will love. Well, yeah, that's great. That's a good start, but that's not everything.
Well, there's so many things to consider. I mean, so many things to consider that when you're doing this and you're kind of building out that business plan, where do you start? Do you have a template you recommend or an app, or like where do you start figuring out one of the hundreds of things you have to think through to get this right?
I don't typically use an app. I actually go through and I look at, the first thing I do is, what is it that I want to do, right? What is it? Because the way I approach a business is I have to first like what it is myself. Because my attitude about it is, if I don't have an excitement about what I'm doing, I'm probably not going to do it that well. That's just the way I think. And so my attitude is, okay, first I have to figure out what exactly I want to do. The next thing I'm going to do is I sit there and I map out what industry I'm in. This is the very start of it. If you want like the top line, I look at what I want to do. I look at what industry I'm in, and then I start looking at what exactly the size of the market is to begin with. What are the competitors that are out there? And I go from there.
What other things have you found that are in there that entrepreneurs commonly overlook or make their biggest mistakes because they don't have those? Like, for example, is there a process to developing a revenue model of how your business is going to make revenue and thinking through that? I mean, what kind of things are overlooked?
One thing that I tell you that I see all the time that's overlooked is something I mentioned, and something that actually I learned through some very bad experiences and some very good ones, but some very bad ones, is capital. Capital, where you get it from. Yeah, and the funny thing is, you have to look at, okay, even if you're getting, let's say you decide, okay, a loan will work for me, some sort of a revolving capital will work for me, fine. Even if you do that, you still have to look at who you're getting it from, because their attitude about what they need out of that, that money that they're rolling out, how fast they expect to be making money out of it, what they need to be serviced, and how much control they're going to want over your business is going to have huge impacts, both short-term and long-term, on how you run your business, and frankly, whether you are able to succeed. So capital is just a huge one. Number two is logistics. Virtually no one looks at logistics when they start a business. They completely overlook that piece, and it's where, frankly, a lot of businesses are made or fail. And the difference is, what happens is they'll get into something. They may have the greatest product in the world, but how they get it from the manufacturing process into a consumer's hand, and then how they deal with those consumers after they get them, is an absolute mystery to them. When you start questioning people on those particular issues, that's when you see, okay, well, let's start building this out for you. Let's figure this out. So logistics becomes a huge issue.
What do you think about becoming an effective leader, CEO? What kind of characteristics are there? I mean, if you've gone through this the right way, you've developed the plan, you've thought about financing, you've thought about logistics, you've thought about several of the things that you've mentioned today. what's the next step of actually successfully running a business, being a good leader, being a good CEO?
Well, being a good leader first means you have to have a team around you, right? And so that's who you're leading. So the one, being able to put together that team. One thing of when you look at any great leader is everybody else that they have around them. If they don't have a very good team around them, it says a whole lot about how they are as a leader. So that's the first piece that you have to do. The next piece is actually figuring out who that team should be, like meaning what are the pieces that you're filling in. That's something that a lot of times people overlook, is what is it that I need? Especially when you're dealing with small businesses, what happens is you have someone a lot of times with a strong personality that says, okay, I can be all things to this business. I have to know all of the pieces of business. I believe, yes, you do have to know all of the pieces of your business. I don't believe that you're the best at every piece of the business. That you can always, what you need to do as a leader, and this is what I do, is look at exactly where I have strengths within a business, and I fill in the holes where I am lacking, or where I will be unable to be everything that role needs. You have to be honest with yourself in that situation, because if you're not honest, you end up putting together a group that really doesn't function very well. And then you have to sit there and make sure that they have the necessary autonomy while at the same time managing everybody properly. That's a very tricky balance. You have to, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of brushing up on your skills.
How do you really do this the right way? I mean, is there help you can get along the way? Like, do you recommend business coaches?
I do, in this sense. I think that in every situation, getting to the extent that your budget and both time and money allow, getting guidance, getting some sort of mentorship is incredibly important, and it helps you avoid a lot of pitfalls that you may not be seeing, especially if you're looking at someone that's a third party, because they come into your business kind of with fresh eyes. And looking at it from a different perspective. You end up as a business owner a lot of times having tunnel vision and looking at certain things and getting stuck in your ways. This allows you to get different perspectives. It's very important. But again, that's not something that's an absolute necessity to being successful in a business. I only recommend it where the budget allows, and where your time allows. And in that circumstance, I recommend it always, because anytime you can get some perspective, anytime you can get some coaching, anytime you can get someone who's been, for example, I tell people this about myself. I'll use the PG version of it. I have more guts than brains, which basically means that I'll do all these different things, and I've tried a variety of things, and I've failed at a variety of things. And so pretty much as a small business owner, if find yourself in a situation, I've probably personally been there. And having that kind of a thing of somebody who's personally been there, I think is always an advantage.
We've talked a lot about your product not being your business, but if we jump back to product, if you're getting going, how do you develop the right products? How do you name them? How do you figure out what product you should have? How do you test it without kind of going all in, pricing it? I mean, give me some insight of how you create the products that you need to actually be able to sell.
Yeah, a lot of times what happens is what we're looking at is you're gonna have to sort of have a variety of products that you're gonna want to get into. There's one entrepreneur that I was listening to, who's a very well-known guy, and one of the things he actually said was, look, I understand you have something in your head about what your product is and what you're trying to sell, but don't be absolutely stuck to it, because as you go along and as you're developing a business, you end up having to change that because of a variety of things, right? Because of the way the market is, because of the way the customer ends up being, because of a lot of things that change, economic times that change. So, he'll give you an example of, hey, look, YouTube started as a dating site. Google started out as they wanted to put together something to basically be an aid for scientific research, and to be able to research that way. And so they developed into all completely different things because there was that open mind of looking at something and developing with the market and making changes. Granted, some things are just changes you're not going to want to make. Some things are changes that, where it makes no sense. But at the same time, having that open mind to be able to make those changes to actually meet your consumers. The other thing that you have to do market analysis. And you can do that both. I mean, it can be as expensive as you want. It can be as cheap as you want, right? And just because it's expensive doesn't mean that it's the best thing that you're doing. But you have to do some sort of market analysis to understand exactly what industry you're in, what the market looks like, what are your barriers to entry, what does it take to actually get this product that you're thinking about selling, right, into a consumer's hand. Are you manufacturing that product yourself? Are you going to use partners? Are you going to manufacture some component of it and have other component manufacturers? Are you going to go to a manufacturer and do a white label business, where you just put your brand on it and sell a product that's manufactured by someone else? All of those things you're going to have to actually put together in your mind, and then see, what the costs are associated with getting that piece of the product, having a full product with your brand sitting on it. How much is that going to cost? Okay. And then looking at the market and seeing what kind of marketing you're going to have to do. Are you going to be able to, is this something you're going to be able to bootstrap, or are you going to need investors at that point? Because once you have an idea of the kind of marketing you need in order to get this product into the customer's hand, then you can actually start putting together a budget.
What are some of the strategies you've seen through COVID that business owners have adopted to still be successful, sometimes even have some of their best years or best year through this?
I always tell people this, within any situation, you have to look at the opportunity. When you look at COVID, for example, we had an unprecedented, completely unexpected situation happen, putting aside the health issues, because it's a horrible health situation. But looking at it in terms of business only, you had businesses that said, "Oh, geez," and they just took cover and they said, "It's over for me," and they closed down ultimately. You had businesses like the Amazons of the world, where they had a lot of opportunities that presented them just because of the way that their business was. And then you had this third category, what I call third category, which is businesses that looked actually for opportunities. And in terms of opportunities, what I don't, look, yeah, so anybody could say, okay, well, I'm going to go start selling masks right now, and because those are real popular, and people need them. I'm talking about staying within your business. So, for example, restaurants are a very typical example of the ones that got hit really, really hard because of COVID. And a lot of them actually made huge changes and survived. And some of them are more profitable today than they were back then, right? And in fact, they're hitting today's times when they're getting some patronage, saying that they're going to be much bigger than they were before COVID. Now, how did they do that? Because what they saw was opportunities. They automated a lot of stuff. When you, like right now, for example, when you go and try to order from any restaurant, that entire platform has changed for most restaurants. Now, whether they do it through a third party, like a one of these food apps or not, what they did was they completely changed around how the customer can order from their restaurant. That changed around the way customers actually treat that process. For example, when I want to go order something, I look for those conveniences, right? Can I reach the menu? Can I just click and get everything I want? What kind of customization do I have? How far can I schedule my order? All of those things were not available by and large before COVID. These are all things that these restaurants put together because of COVID, right? During COVID, that allowed consumers to then say, okay, here, I'm going to start ordering out. A lot of restaurants that weren't offering food for takeout offered food for takeout, and that's how they survived. And now they have a model where they're offering food for takeout, and they have customers inside the restaurant. Essentially, they opened up an entire channel of sales for themselves that they weren't even expecting. They didn't even want before COVID, but now it is a big part of their profitability. These are strategies that they use that where they saw opportunity in something that was a complete calamity, and they ended up thriving because of it.
What about lifetime value? Speaking of along that line, I mean, you know, how do you go about calculating what a customer is really worth your organization?
Well, I mean, obviously, you talked about lifetime value. The one thing that I always say to people is that, you know, lengthening that lifetime value, basically turning around and being able to, anytime you're able to market and sell to your current customers, that is a gift. And that's because marketing to your current customers comes down to be much cheaper. A lot of small businesses don't take advantage of that. They're all about new customer acquisition rather than increasing what they're getting out of the current customers. One thing I say, for example, is creating recurring revenue. Always creating recurring revenue with your customers is an incredibly important thing. And I mentioned the humidifier business a little bit ago. You know, these people came to us and it was more in terms of us purchasing the business, and they were selling thousands of humidifiers. And to us, that was a problem because not because of how well they were selling it. And this was during COVID, right? Where they had seen a spike in their sales because of COVID, because of the health aspects associated with humidifiers. But for us, we saw a bunch of one-off sales, right? A customer that comes there, they buy, and then you have to deal with all of the stuff having to do with that customer, right? What if something goes bad? What if something breaks? All of the bad stuff that may come from your product that the customer is not going to be happy with. That's a lot of times what I notice with one-off sales is that the rest of your relationship with that customer is not about good stuff, it's about bad stuff. So the first thing that we did was we looked at, well, what do we do in terms of recurring revenue with this business? There's filters, there's essential oils that you can sell to the customers, and that is the good stuff. So creating recurring revenues where you're taking existing customers and you're putting them into a queue where they're constantly buying product from you on a subscription or on some sort of regular basis creates a whole lot of different things. One, it creates continuous revenue base, a reliable revenue base. It increases the lifetime value of that customer. It also creates a whole lot of satisfaction from that customer. They're no longer just corresponding with you about bad stuff, about the thing breaking, about having to return something. They're also corresponding with you about good stuff. What else are you guys going to have? What about this? What about that? Oh, I really love the way this thing comes out, you know, one way or the other. And so it creates a lot, if you do it right, it creates a lot of customer satisfaction. It brings about a lot more reviews, and frankly, your customers are one of your best referral sources. They're the most reliable referral sources. And so it creates all of those different things. So I always tell people, the number one thing you have to do is look for that subscription model, look for that recurring revenue. And whenever they tell me, oh, wait a minute, I don't know if it fits into my business, I don't know if I can do it for my business, I always use one example. It's a friend of mine who's an investor and ran this company for a while. They're an underwear business. They have underwear on a subscription. Okay, if someone can do underwear on a subscription and have a successful business, then anyone can do it. And you know, I say that as a compliment to them. I commend them for that, and I also use them as an example to say that absolutely this is something that you could do. And again, those things are what really build a firm customer base. Anyway, so.
Enlightening stuff today. I love this, and it really a deep dive into, you know, why your product isn't your business, but your business really is your product. So good overview of everything. Where can everybody go watching and listening today to be able to learn more?
Yeah, I made it easy. You can go to connectwithshawn.com because my last name is tough to spell. So connectwithshawn.com, SHAWN. My new startup actually is my next business, eplaybooks.com. So at both of those places, you can reach me. And the funny thing is, when COVID happened, me and a couple of my colleagues got together and said, hey, you know what? Let's write some stuff about how you can anything proof your business. We were already thinking about anything proofing your business. How can you COVID proof it? How can you anything proof it? And we ended up writing an entire book about it. So for your audience, I'm happy to provide that for free if they contact me at either one of those places, connectwithshawn.com or eplaybooks.com. They can have that without any further obligation.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it's really awesome having you. So listen, everybody, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I think Shawn said it best. How do you anything proof your business, right? I mean, I am where I am because I lost everything in the mortgage crisis. That came out of left field. I was in the mortgage business at the time. COVID came out of left field for a lot of us as well. So, that's the way economies are. I mean, it's going to shift. You're going to have peaks, you're going to have troughs, and we never really know typically what's going to cause it. So you've got to, as Shawn said, anything proof the business. And I think the first thing is to understand that your product isn't your business and your business is your product, and work on improving the overall business to be able to make your customers happy, your employees happy, and be able to really give back and earn, the financial freedom that you want to earn. So next steps, go to connectwithshawn.com. That's connectwithshawn, SHAWN. If you go to connectwithshawn.com, it's going to take you to their main website. You can also go to eplaybooks.com. And ebooks, both these sites have a ton of resources, a lot of information there that will help you take next steps to, I think, as Shawn said it best, to really go down the road of anything proofing your business and get away from thinking that your product is your business and start making your business itself the product. So make sure you visit connectwithshawn.com and eplaybooks.com. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great day.